Alright, hello everybody. My name is Jason. I'm JNC on the DC Designs Discord. Here lately we've been noticing there's been some issues with some guys flying the Harrier, so I figured I would explain a little bit about it, do a quick flight, and show you how it works. So about me, I've been working on the Harrier since 1998. I know pretty much everything there is to know about the Harrier. I'm not a real Harrier pilot, but I am a plane captain and a high power qualified mechanic. So I do know a lot about the Harrier, and I am not afraid to answer any questions you might have about it. Uh, Going around the Harrier here, um, we got the intake here. You got your aux air doors here, which when your intake pressure is below 1 psi, these doors will be open. So anytime you're in a hover, flying slow, starting the aircraft, these doors will all be open. When you're in fast forward flight and your intake pressure increases, these doors shut. Um, Looking underneath the plane, you got your lids fence here behind the nose strut, and you got your strakes on each side here, and you got your speed brake in the back. What these four components do, they're part of the lid system. So when the jet is in a hover, you have air circulating around from each side of the plane coming from these four nozzles, and it's helping push the aircraft up with ground effect. Um, you got your cold nozzle here in the front and your hot nozzle in the back. Um, Up here on top, you have your lurks, leading edge root extension, which helps the plane's aerodynamics in flight. Um, I'm not going to go into too much detail on all the components of the Harrier, as this video is mostly about flying it. So let's get inside and get it started. So inside, swinging around here, fuel shutoff lever. Cold and dark, the fuel is always on. You got your deck switch, which is your digital electronic fuel control. That's basically like a fuel injection system for a jet engine. Up here you would have your manual fuel, which if you had a problem with your deck use, which on the sim you never will, you would engage manual fuel and use the throttle very gingerly to control the engine in an emergency. So oxygen switch here. There's really very few things that you have to have on to fly this plane in the sim. I'm going to turn on all the lights, your fuel prop, your boost pumps, your fuel prop here. It basically just keeps your fuel level, left and right fuel groups level. You got your jet pipe temperature limiter. I don't think it's really modeled in the sim, but it's always on when you have the aircraft running. Your Q feel, your yaw, your yaw, roll, and pitch, which is part of the SAW system, helps keep the airplane easier to fly. Really, it's basically like automatic flight control system, but in the Harrier you call it SAWS. The Q feel is not really something you can model in the sim because it's something that you have to feel. Basically what it is when you're flying at a faster speed, it it puts pressure on the rudder pedals, and it puts pressure on the stick and the pitch axis, so that the pilot doesn't over-G the aircraft, or as the rudders are concerned, put it into or go into a departure. Your anti-skid is normally on, so we'll put the flaps in cruise to start. Water isn't really modeled. I mean, it is modeled. It'll show flow, but it doesn't really affect the performance as of right now. We are going to do an update this year, and we'll see how far things can go. So I'll hide the stick, and I'm going to turn my FLIR on, put my INS and ground align, turn all these switches on here, unhide the stick. I always set these 4 switches here on. That's pretty much it, really. As far as the nozzle controls go, you got your nozzle rotation handle. 0 degrees is nozzles aft. It is called the aft stop because when it's at that stop, your nozzles are aft. So you go all the way the other way to 98.5 degrees. That is called your braking stop. What it does is it moves the nozzles forward and it applies air pushing forward in a forward direction to slow the plane down. It's not used a whole lot. Sometimes on landing, they'll use it to use engine braking, and it's not generally used a whole lot. Here you have your stow stop, or on here it's called the nozzle limiter handle, but basically what it does is you have a range through here. So when I take off, I normally set it to about 60. It doesn't have to be perfect. 62 is fine. Then after takeoff, I'll pull it all the way back. That way I have full control of where I want to move the nozzles in flight. So let's get the battery on here. Generator switch on. APU switch on. Engine start switch. Wait for it to come alive. TACAN for Cherry Point is 75 X-ray, so we'll hit that enter there. You see the TACAN come to life on the MFD there. This is your engine page. You can see that we have RPM indication coming up, JPT coming up, fuel flow coming up. Everything on the engine page is scrolling like it should. We'll wait for it to get up and running. Hide pressure coming up. I just have this weather set as a nice day here. Normal standard pressure. So when you get to an idle, your nozzles should be set to 10 degrees, which I just did there. Flaps and cruise. There's a lot more to running this plane, but I'm not going to go into it on the simulator because it would just be worthless information for you guys. But as far as running it, there's a lot to it. For this flight, we'll just be using the standard 5,500 pounds. This is a day attack aircraft, so that would be about right if you were going to go out and do some hover practice. Radar jet, you'd do about 4,500 pounds, just because they weigh more. So we'll put it in V-stall mode. You'll hear the beep there. That's pretty much it, really. Let's get out to the runway. Brakes off. Start accelerating here. This is Cherry Point, by the way, where I work. It's not really a good model in the sim. It's just where I work and fly mostly because I'm used to the area. We'll take off of runway 5 right over here. This area right here that I'm taxiing through is warm-up area 2. Warm-up area 1 is over off to the left. On Cherry Point there are 4 hover pads, so depending on the wind, it would depend on which hover pad is active, and yeah. Sorry, I'm not really a content creator, so if I stumble around in talking, I apologize. This is really the first tutorial that I've ever done for a YouTube channel, so bear with me. Get it all centered up here on the runway. So let it come to a stop. We got our stow stop lever set to 62 still. We got our flaps and cruise, which we're going to set to stall just because we're going to do a short takeoff. That's it really. I always take off with my nose wheel steering in low, just for better directional control. You'll see there that the nose wheel steering is active in the HUD. So let's get going. Toe brakes on, throttle up, and let her go. Picking up airspeed now. Once I get up to about 60 or so, 70, roll the nozzles back to 60 degrees, gear up, flaps and nozzles forward, flaps up, nozzles forward, and that's it. So generally for the Harrier, gear down, you want to be below 250 knots. The flaps are limited to 300 knots. So now that we're up, we can put the flaps to cruise. Alright, I'm going to turn this tack-an off or it's going to drive me crazy. So we'll just do a left traffic pattern here. Come back around to runway 23 right. This is where we're flying over now is the Croatan National Forest. I know all this is really nothing that you need to know, but I feel like I should be saying something while I'm flying. So coming up kind of close to where I live. I don't live far from the base, so I'm always hearing aircraft flying over. So we're on our downwind leg now, so I'm going to start slowing down. Start decreasing my altitude a little bit. There's the airfield there. This body of water in front of me is called the Neuse River. It goes into the Pamlico Sound and then it goes into the Atlantic Ocean. So 250 knots. We can drop, go a little bit slower, drop the gear a little bit below 250 knots. I'm going to put my flaps back to stall and set my nozzles to 60 degrees. This is generally where I keep my nozzles for takeoff and a slow landing, or a stall landing, I guess you would call it. Yeah. There's the runway there. This is pretty much the route that the pilots take flying the Harriers into the base over my house all the time. Can get quite annoying, but it is what it is. So we're coming in here. There's the runway. Slow down a little bit more. See there, I got the witch's hat above the velocity vector. I'm going to trim up just a little bit. Get the velocity vector in the E bracket, and you'll see that the angle of attack gauge should turn yellow or green once it's happy. There we go. So going a little bit slow here. But the Harrier can do slow. It doesn't mind it. You just have to set everything properly. Basically, the Harrier, just keep your movements small. Move your nozzles slow. Everything has to be very accurate and deliberate when you're flying this aircraft. Any sharp movements or jerking the nozzles around, and it's not going to fly right. So just try to be real smooth, and she'll behave for you. It just takes quite a bit of practice. Here I'm just using my stick and throttle to get my airplane to go where I want. A little bit low there. So there was a fairly decent landing. What I'll show you now is I'm going to do another short takeoff and go directly into the hover pad over here. So brakes on, throttle up. Hold on, I've got to move my stove stop, so bear with me for a second. Alright, that's not really how you do it, but what I'm going to do now is just come back around for a vertical landing. Generally, you want to come into the hover about 100, you try to stay about 150 feet above the pad. That way you're not kicking up too much dust and debris before you get there. And you always want to brake. See, the nozzles here are 98 degrees. You use it for engine braking. Slow down real quick. I'll move them back to about 82 there, which is generally your hover stop. So when you're coming in and you're slowing down too much or speeding up, you gotta work your nozzles. So move your nozzles back to 70 degrees, which I'm doing now to keep a little bit of speed on it. And as you get closer, you start rolling the nozzles down, keeping it above 150 feet before you around there before you get to the pad. As you approach the pad, you want to start slowing down as much as you can. Right, got it to just about 82 degrees there, nozzles. Like I said, it depends on the wind. You generally want to hover into the wind, so there's no set nozzle position. You just got to work it until you find where it's going to stop hovering or stop moving forward into the hover. So as you can see, I'm pretty much hovering in one spot there. And you can, spin around with the rudder here. Stop. You can go the other way. Stop. You can fly it left. Stop. Fly it back to the right. Stop. Yeah, it's just a plane that you have to keep working at to fly good. It's nothing you're going to learn overnight. There's another thing they'll do in air shows. It's called the bow. So basically, get up here in a hover and you push the nose down, and while you're pushing, whoop, wrong way, sorry, went the wrong way. Let me try that again. So they do a thing called a bow, where they get the nose down like this, put it basically in a braking stop. They do a lot of stuff in the air shows. It's pretty neat to watch. Harrier's only got about 3 or 4 more years here left in the U.S., so there's not going to be too many more air shows with them. We got one in May here coming up. I'll definitely be going to that. So yeah, there's not a whole lot more to explain. You just, like I said, you just have to be real deliberate, real slow with the movements. And you can hover all day. You just have to learn your control technique and how it works for you. It's definitely not a plane that you want to fly from the external view, because it's a seat of your pants type of airplane. You need to be in here to see what's going on. You need to see if you're rolling, you need to see if you're yawing or pitching or anything like that. If you're outside the plane, you can see it, but you're just going to get confused because it's not, you're not in there seeing it. So I mean, everybody flies how they want to fly, but it's just it's a plane that you have to give it a little bit more attention than a regular one. So hovering is not impossible. It's just something you have to learn. See, I got 82-degree nozzles coming down fairly straight, and then I'll show you a what they call a press up, just when they're sitting on the hover pad. So in a press up, you want to be into the wind, which I didn't land directly into the wind, but it's on a very light wind setting today. So, but this is what you would do. You see right in front of the HUD here, you got your side slip indicator, or the nickname is a wind vane. You want to watch that. So if you're turning this way, you can see that it moved, so the wind is coming like at a 45-degree angle like that. So go back into the wind. You want to make it point straight ahead. Roll your nozzles to 82 degrees, flaps and stole. Over here, these are your master modes here. You got V-stall, nav, and air to ground. Air to ground you don't need in the sim. Nav is just it's just different HUD symbology. So you got V-stall, which always shows your RPM, your JPT, your nozzles, and your flaps. And you go to nav, which on the ground with the gear down it's always with the gear down, it's always going to show you these four, but when you take off and you put the gear up, it's going to change, and I'll show you that in just a second. So 82-degree nozzles, 62 degrees flaps, and we'll do a hover here. Coming up, pull the RPM back a little bit to stop it, get to about 100-foot hover. Pull back the throttle. You got to work the throttle a little bit. But here I'll put the gear up and you'll see the symbology on the HUD change. And there you go. That's nav mode. So you got your angle of attack, you got your Mach number, you got your grounds, your G's, and your ground speed. So to get out of the hover, you just roll the nozzles forward, and here's another one they do at an air show. They pull the nose up. She's gonna struggle and shake, but she's gonna go up. It's got a lot of power for the aircraft's weight, so she'll go up at a pretty good angle. It's got a lot of power. So come back down. Put the flaps in auto. They don't have to be in cruise, they can be in auto. Yeah, so I hope this explains a little bit about the Harrier. My one takeoff wasn't really very good because I forgot to set the lever properly, but the general flying of the Harrier, you don't want to try hovering at high altitudes. That's not really what it's designed for. It's just a short takeoff and landing jet, so you use the hover mode for landings, takeoffs, landing on ships. A guy last night said in hides, which the Harrier is very capable of. Yes, you can still do that. We just don't really do it much anymore. Yeah, there's a town of Havelock. Not very big, but that's where Cherry Point is. You got the lakes out there in the Croatan. So, yep. Speed brake, you can see it slows down really fast. Put that back up, put the gear down, flaps down, nozzles down. Get her going straight there. You always got to work your controls. Come back in to do another hover landing and call it a night. We'll land on the north pad this time. North pad at Cherry Point is right in between, or actually it's on a taxiway. So right in front of us is Foxtrot Taxiway, that long, wide taxiway. It used to be a runway, but now it's just called Foxtrot Taxiway. And then the taxiway from left to right is called Kilo. So we're approaching the pad now. Try to stay about 150 feet or so, slowing down. Give it a little bit more aft nozzles to get there a little bit faster. So then you see the wind direction there. So what I'm going to do, in the real Harrier, not so much in the sim because it would probably be impossible to model, but you always want to hover into the wind, because the Harrier, if you don't, will ingest hot exhaust air, and you'll lose a lot of performance, and you can even have a compressor stall. So you always want to hover into the wind, but if you're at 125, 150 feet, you're not going to get that hot air ingestion. It's just when you get lower. So align yourself into the wind there, and then you can start coming down, and you can watch your airspeed and watch your directional movement to make any adjustments you need. Like I said, I'm not a professional pilot or anything, but I figured I would at least make this video and show people kinda how to fly the Harrier. Yeah, there it is. So anyway, I hope this helps some people. Sorry for that one bad takeoff, but everybody makes mistakes, and I'm not a video editor, so I'm not gonna go cut it out and make my video perfect. I'm just a straight shooter. I'm gonna show you how it is, and this is the Harrier. If you have any questions at all, don't be afraid to ask. Very approachable person, and us mods and DC and CJ and anybody there will be more than happy to help you fly this plane. So, all right, have a good night.